Today, we're back out at a little lake we haven't been to in over a year. This little lake is heavily pressured, but we're going to talk about where to find those bass in June on your heavily pressured fisheries. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Got him. Ooh, that's nice. That's not small. There went my worm. That was brown. Mm-hmm. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And now that we've entered the month of June, bass fishing pressure is nearing its peak. That means every single time you go out to the lake, you're competing with other anglers for those best spots. And it doesn't matter if you're fishing from the bank or fishing from the boat. Those bass are feeling the pressure. And when it comes to summertime bass fishing, there are traditionally two types of bass populations. Those that go out deep and those that stay shallow. Now, when we think of traditional summertime patterns, we normally think of bass that have pulled off and have gone out deep. And a lot of times you'll see guys on the front deck of their boat using their forward-facing sonar to snipe those bass with swim baits, hover rigs, drop shots, what have you. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's how you have fun, then 100% I am all for you fishing like that. But myself, I prefer something a little bit different, especially since I don't have forward-facing sonar on my little plastic boat. But I have noticed that bass, over the years, they try to avoid pressure more than they will try to fit into their summer pattern. And the science backs that up. Now, there has been a study done on Toledo Bend several years ago, as well as a study done by the University of Illinois, which both focus on fishing pressure. And the thing that they both of these studies showed, which were independent from each other, is that, number one, bass avoid pressure like the plague. If they can avoid the pressure, then they will do that. And the number two thing is, most of the bass in the lake, 70 to 75% of the bass in any given fishery have never been caught. That means that the fish that are getting caught are either they're being taken and the next generation is replacing them, or they're getting caught and released and then caught again. And again, the science backs that up. The study from the University of Illinois talked about having an isolated tank where they fished for bass and caught the bass over and over again. They were noticing, but then they noticed that there was a whole population of bass that they were never caught. So those bass that were predisposed to not biting the lures, they were moving away from that pressure, as well as the other study on Toledo Bend. They were showing that those bass were moving away from the pressure. And they will do so even if it means avoiding their instinct. If their instincts say to go out deep, but they notice fishing pressure, they'll actually find places to avoid that fishing pressure. So that's when you've got to really be smart. That's when you've really got to dig deep. Now, a lot of guys have no problem with forming that conga line, right? When you've got the lead boat, he's fishing, another boat right behind him, and another boat right behind that, and they're all taking turns fishing that community hole, one right after the other. But to me, there is a better way. I like to go, which is why I have my little boat, I like to go places that other anglers either can't or just won't, for one reason or the other. Now, typically, when I'm fishing the big lake, a lot of times I get to fish the areas that I do, not because other boats can't or won't go there. It's because a lot of anglers just don't like dealing with thick vegetation. And if you've ever fished in the Gulf South or even Florida or any place like that, try getting away from the vegetation. The only place you're going to avoid vegetation is if you go out way deep. And again, in the summertime, that's where a lot of anglers go. But I want those bass that are trying to avoid the pressure. Those are the bass that I'm seeking. And believe it or not, they will end up in some of the places that you never think that bass will. They'll be in the middle of a creek channel in shallow water, right? And you would think, well, that's the craziest place they're going to be. Why aren't they undercover? Well, because they still have the urge to want to pull off from that bank, but that hydrilla, where I'm fishing, believe it or not, that hydrilla still offers quite a bit of shade. It offers quite a bit of cover, and it makes those bass feel comfortable, and it makes them feel like they're safe from that fishing pressure. So they'll stay there all summer long, and you can consistently find those bass, and you can catch those bass. And the best part about it is they're not pressured, and they're more active. You can find these bass and you can catch them on a lot more of a variety of baits than you normally think you would. So those are the places that I'm looking for first and foremost. They may not be your stereotypical bass fishing holes, but a lot of times those are going to be the places that you really want to target. Now, as an example, if you see here on the Big Lake, this is the very northern part that I talk about where I like to fish. Now, when I'm fishing this area, you would think along the sides, all along this flooded brush. And sure, I can catch quite a few little buck males up underneath that flooded brush. But if I want the nicer fish, well, then I move out to the middle of the channel. But if we look at it, we notice that whenever this lake is low, there is a submerged creek channel that flows through there. As a matter of fact, it's the main creek channel that feeds the entire lake. So those bass actually have a reason to be there. It's a sneaky reason, but those are the types of places that I'm talking about. Again, it all goes back to being able to do your homework. So what you're looking for are places like submerged creek channels next to hydrilla flats. It's an odd combination. A lot of guys wouldn't think to work there. Or if you can find maybe a hydrilla flat that opens up into a creek arm, right? If you've got a back creek arm and you see a hydrilla flat on the edge of that. Or maybe you see a main lake point and you've got current that comes from either side of that main lake point. Again, you want to find the places, the hidden gems that other guys are not looking for. And once you can find those places, well, then there's some real great bass fishing going on. And what am I working? Well, obviously I'm going to be working something like the good old Waco rig. It's slow. Those bass, especially when they're pressured, they want something more finesse. And that Waco rig, especially when it's got all the vegetation and all the slop to work with, well, it comes through like a dream. And again, the new version of that we've been using lately, the NACO Waco, or the TICO, or I've heard some other guys call it different things, but we're not calling it the lowbrow rig because that's been taken by something else. But that is another great way. And of course, you can't beat a good old top water blow up. And of course, right behind me, what do you see? You see piers. Never miss a pier. If you have a chance to target a pier or a dock, especially on a small lake that tends to be crowded. This lake's only 65 acres, so it is tiny, tiny. Yet, right now, it's in the evening, and I'm seeing 6 and 7 boats right out there. So even though we're getting late in the day on a little lake, there are still a lot of boats. But one of the first things that we decided to do when we launched the little plastic boat, well, we targeted those piers, and we were not disappointed. Got him. Ooh, that's nice. That's not small. There went my worm. That was brown. That is a good fish. Holy cow, look at how he's tummied up. You ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere. That was the brown one, or the copper colored one. Boy, that is a nice bass. Look at how that dude is tummied up. That dude has got a tummy on him. Look at that. Pretty. Feeding bass. Feeding on feeding on bluegill. Nice, gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. He's probably just north of 2 pounds. We sure do appreciate that. Thank you very much. You have a nice day.
That's a nice one.
All right, so a really nice 2 pound plus bass that was really tummied up. Nice and fat. Pulled it out from under a pier as soon as it hits the water. Now, we continued up away from everybody else, and we found a whole area full of nothing but pondweed, and we started throwing around a topwater frog in an area that you would think this is just where you would throw a frog. I know the last video that I did, I was talking about different places to throw a frog you may not think of. Well, if there was ever a place that you did think about throwing a frog, this would be it. And, well, you know, the wife, she showed me up again, and she caught this nice tank on that nice chartreuse frog that I have. Does the boat cooperate? Get him, Sid! Set the hook! Set the hook! All right! Look at you! Get him! He's gonna dig. Get him! Oh, you got him! Oh, you got him! Look at that toad! Oh my goodness gracious! Look at that monster! And he wanted it! Look at that! He wanted that!
Yeah.
Look at that beautiful, gorgeous 2.5 pound bass!
Yeah.
Wow! Wow!
That's fun.
Did you see the way he exploded on that?
Yeah.
And the chartreuse, or as Hank says, chartreuse. Now you see this. Why this is my favorite. This is my favorite frog. And the thing about fishing topwater frogs is they don't catch inks. Look at how dark and beautiful that bass is. You want a picture with this one, of course.
I do.
That's your first topwater frog bass. So it doesn't have to be the same old, same old. Just because a lake is pressured doesn't mean it has to be an agonizing grind. Find those sweet spots. Sure, you may have to work for it. You may have to break down your lake's water all over again. But I'm telling you, it is very much worth it. Don't be afraid to do that. Look for those out-of-the-way spots, those hidden gems, those places that you might not think that bass ever congregate. You never know. There might be a hidden brush pile right up under there that those bass are on that nobody even knows about. Or there may be a flat spot or a hump or a saddle under the water that nobody knows about except you. And I'm telling you, while those bass really want to set up in their summer patterns, they want much more to escape that fishing pressure. So there you have it. The best way I know of to avoid fishing pressure and still catch piles of bass all summer long. It might require a little legwork, but in the end, it's very much worth it. And it's not nearly as hard to do as you might think it is. So give it a try. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.